So I'm on the road today. Found a coffee shop sitting outside. Hopefully, my connection will be good enough I can hang out for the rest of the call, and hopefully there's not too much noise here. There's some funky background music going on and road noise, but just let me know if it becomes a problem. Let's kick this thing off. We have a pretty full agenda today. There are several things flag, a few minor surprises that popped up over the past week. And then we got a pretty thorough liquidity mining check-in with Josh, so I'm looking forward to that. We should review our sprint planning since we're pretty much at the beginning of the current 2-week cycle after the Thanksgiving holiday. And then we'll also talk about the next phase of staking for OGN and what that might mean in the future. And then a few other updates on the marketing side and a governance proposal that I think we'll probably touch on throughout the meeting a couple of times. Josh or anyone else, is there anything that we should include before we get started?
I think you covered it.
I guess I always say that if you're watching and recording later, not already in Discord, you should join us at originprotocol.com/Discord. We hang out primarily in the Origin Dollar discussion channel. That's where you can probably find the meeting notes for this call, and then also that's where most of the ongoing discussion happens that isn't engineering focused, although that channel is quite interesting as well. So let's touch on a few announcements or things that we wanted to flag from the past week. First thing is that $300,000 was allocated to the new convex strategy after a governance vote was approved. I think we'll get an update from Daniel later on how that's going. Then we had a couple of new contributions on the engineering side from Calvin, I think his name is, Calvin DOES in GitHub and or class. Thanks for I think quite simple CSS or HTML change, but I certainly appreciate it. It was a little nagging issue that's been bugging me since we launched this app, a year ago. So those certainly don't go unappreciated, and that's how I think most engineers have gotten started getting involved in the team, is making a small improvement to the code base. It's a great way to get your feet wet. So we welcome anyone who would be interested in doing that. Then we also had a proposal that I had submitted to DBank. We've been trying to get them to add OUSD to their DeFi list and have not been successful. I think it might have actually been on the DeFi list like a year ago or so, but somehow ended up coming off. And so I'm doing what I can in back channel discussion to push that through. But it'd be great if anyone wants to find that link here in the mini notes or in Discord and submit a vote if you are a DBank user. Any other announcements that you guys have in mind? Interrupt me if you think of something. Otherwise, I will push through and highlight a few surprises from the past week. Going back to DBank for a second, it's showing an OUSD price of 0. And I'm not entirely sure why that is, but again, I'm trying to get that fixed. I submitted a proposal that could also use your vote if you want to help us out there. And the consequence there is just that if someone is holding OUSD in their portfolio, they don't see any value from it on their account, but no real consequence otherwise. Then, Josh, did you want to say something about CoinMarketCap circulating supply?
Yeah, just it's frustrating that our circulating supply is incorrect there. And then on both CoinGecko and CoinMarketCap, they're not recording our trading volume correctly. We're having trouble getting them to update that. They at least for support, people don't seem to understand the difference between the DEXs and all the other exchanges, and they're saying, well, Curve needs to push it to us. I'm like, no, you need to just go pull it. So we're trying to get that updated. Obviously, that's important as centralized exchanges are going to be looking at trading volumes as a key indicator on whether it's worth integrating or not. So if anyone has any insights on how we can get CoinMarketCap or CoinGecko to fix the curve and then also Uniswap be free, that would be great.
Good deal. Well, thanks for continuing to push on that.
Yeah, I can take the next one here as well. The bribes that we were offering on Curve were not showing up on cur.vote, which is an alternate interface for viewing the bribes, but I wasn't aware of. All things in the Curve ecosystem, there's usually 3 or 4 different UIs that do the same thing. And unfortunately, we weren't including that because pretty much everything on Curve works with whitelists, where most of the contracts are permissionless. You can just add stuff yourself, but then nothing shows up in UI until one of the UI engineers goes and adds you to the list. So that is now fixed, and so thankfully we have that, and it's a much better interface for viewing the bribes and seeing how the different pools are ranking. So if you haven't used that particular site before to look at the pools, it is a very useful tool to be able to see who's earning a larger portion of rewards emissions and who's earning less, and you can see those how those are shifting over time. Daniel?
Yeah, so on the convex side of things, Josh will need to mute. On the convex side of things, we beta tested our convex strategy and put $300,000 into it this week. It's been running for 4 days. Unfortunately, it's not actually collecting the rewards. It's earning the rewards token, but we have a bug in our harvest rewards function. So I already got a PR out to fix that. On the plus side, it is actually earning its advertised APYs when checked the actual tokens that we're eligible to collect. And that's roughly three times what our other strategies are adding. So that'll be great for yield once it's up and running.
Thanks, Daniel, for keeping an eye on that. I think we'll come back to that and some other topics when we review the current sprint priorities. But otherwise, unless there are any other surprises or announcements that anyone can think of, I will turn it back to Josh to dive into the liquidity mining progress that we've got, and then we'll come back to Tom, I think, for a quick demo.
Yeah, so liquidity mining continues to do well. We're up to $179 million in circulating supply of OUSD. You can see the weekly analytics snapshot. There's a link in the notes for that. You can see more granular data on how many new users we've picked up. One of the more surprising things is that our campaigns are getting more efficient over time, which is a little surprising because the rewards are obviously highest in the beginning. But what we saw is in week 1, we added $33.9 million, average cost of, or we got $30 of circulating supply for every dollar spent on rewards. On week 2, that went up to $47.7 million for $47 per dollar spent. And then in the 3rd week, we added a whopping $70.7 million and got $68 per dollar spent. So we're accelerating here, we're getting more capital, and we're getting more value for our money. And while it might be surprising at first glance, it actually makes a lot of sense. Out of the degens, the stablecoin farmers are the most conservative, and it obviously the top concern on everyone's mind is security of their funds. And so as they see the circulating supply going up, they become more confident that the funds are safe. I'm also continuing to have a lot of one-on-one conversations with some of these farmers. And top of mind for all of them is the security. They want to know about admin keys, time locks, audits. That is the most important thing for all of them. But we are seeing, a lot of people who came in early are doubling down. They're coming back in with increasingly more capital, which is really encouraging to see. More an observation, I think most people are buying on Curve instead of minting directly, and so Curve pool is regularly getting out of whack, but arbitrageurs are pulling it back on peg and rebalancing that pool. One thing is not doing so well is our Curve Bribe campaign. We actually lost 0.1% of our votes this week, despite spending the same or offering the same amount of rewards as before. Now, again, the week doesn't end till Thursday, midnight UTC, so that may change. Really, I think what's happening here is all the smart money's moving to Convex. And there's diminishing returns on the Curve side. We got sort of all the votes we could buy up front with that. But the amount of money being spent on Convex is just far greater than what's happening on the Curve side. $6.2 million of bribes on Convex, which completely dwarfs what's happening on Curve. It's still really good that we did Curve first, because on Curve you have to pay gas to change your votes, and most people just set their votes and then they leave them for a long time. So it's very sticky, and so the money that we spent there, for the most part, we expected a lot of those votes to stick with us for a reasonable amount of time. So the rewards there should be stickier than what we'll do on Convex bribes, which are working a little bit differently. We got whitelisted on Votium, which is the bribe equivalent for Convex. And so that means that we can now offer OGN as a reward there, and we're going to do that this week. We're going to be running our first Convex bribe campaign to see how that goes. Some of the differences there, it's going to be happening on Snapshot, so it's gasless. Instead of it being passive, so on Curve, you vote once and then your vote just stays that way. On Snapshot, you have to come back every period and do it again. So it takes a little bit more active participation there. It also happens on a different schedule, and it's bi-weekly instead of weekly. So we have to adjust to that. And then there's some other rules around how the votes are distributed. So if any one pool earns over the 30%, right, Fax is right now, they've got 55% of the vote, but they're going to chop that off and share the overflow of those votes with the other pools. The other thing that's been hurting us is that every gauge must have at least half a percentage of the votes before you get any weight at all. And so of the 75 pools that are on Curve, only about a dozen of them are actually getting voted for by Convex. And so this is, up to date, we've not been getting any votes from Convex just because we're not meeting that minimum threshold. So it's imperative that we get above that threshold, just because Convex represents such a large portion of the voting power on Curve. And to that end, we're actually going to take money from Virgin Treasury. We're going to vote lock it on Convex and make sure we have enough to at least get that 0.5% every time. And then that way, we're always going to have at least some emissions coming from Convex. Let's see. Competition is really fierce. Like I said, $6.2 million spent on Convex bribes this week. I dropped a link in the notes so you can check those out. But the good thing is it's still returning $4 of rewards for every dollar spent in bribes. So the ROI is definitely there. But we're going to, we'd like to, continue to do things like buy and vote lock our own CDX instead, and do other things that are maybe more sustainable than constantly giving away OGN. But progress is good. Really happy to see the continued growth and acceleration of this campaign. A lot more awareness of what we're doing with FullUSD. We also have some other integrations coming that will be announced in the coming weeks with other DeFi protocols that are integrating with FullUSD. And all of those things are exactly what we wanted to happen, as they're going to make those integrations are really going to be give FullUSD the kind of staying power that we really want. Any questions before we hand it back to Micah for sprint planning? Micah, back to you.
Thanks. If anyone thinks of anything, don't hesitate to unmute and ask anytime. As I mentioned earlier, we started a new sprint 2-week cycle late last week, and so we had 4 priority projects, and then a few others have popped up since then. But let's start with the first one, which is improving the ledger support for our DApp. Tom, I think you've made some progress on this. Did you want to show us how that's going?
Sure. Discord permissions. Maybe just continue for a sec with the other things and I'll come back to me.
Yeah, no problem. We'll come back to it. The next priority was figuring out what we want to do for decentralized on-chain governance, and that starts with thorough review of all of the other protocols and their governance contracts. Daniel, have you made progress on that?
Yes, I don't think I have a definitive answer, but I have deep dived into both Aave's governance and Compound's governance. Compound has a nice contract that kind of works the way we think of things working. Their UI for it, though, is actually spread across 3 different projects. There's the regular Compound UI for doing both their governance and all the marketplaces is in the same UI. It's also written in the Elm programming language, so it feels like it would be fairly difficult to reuse. Their Gasless Voting is in a separate repository, and it uses Next.js, which we're familiar with. And basically the way their Gasless Voting works is it's actually basically just signature voting, where you sign a signature and the Compound community pays to submit your vote in. So there's actually no complexity to it. It's completely folded into the regular thing, just somebody's subsidizing the voting there, which keeps the contract complexity really low. But then the third part of their voting system is actually their Compound API. Both those 2 previous systems use the Compound API system, which is closed source and not available anywhere. So given that those are 3 separate systems, none of them are really plug and play. If we use Compound's contracts, we would probably need to rewrite the UI layer for the voting stuff. And we could do the same thing they're doing for the Gasless Voting because it's handy. Then on the contract side, the one thing is that the contracts are still in an old Solidity version and wouldn't play very nicely with our current contracts. We'd either have to upgrade them or to the newer Solidity version, or just deploy them exactly as they are and just use them exactly as they are. The Compound is going to be having an upcoming audit on everything. I'd be happier using their contracts after an audit, especially since this would own everything. I'm not exactly sure on the audit history of their current ones, and maybe it's audited enough, but I think they're supposed to be having an audit coming down the pipe this year. On to Aave. Aave does not really have a UI for their stuff that I can tell. They use an interesting system, or a good system for governments, in that first they do a snapshot vote on every proposal, just using the same snapshot system we're using, and then they actually turn into a full-fledged proposals. It's somewhat centralized in that the full-fledged proposals actually have to be committed and basically approved by the team to be committed to the official GitHub repo. The proposals, instead of just being actions you won't run on contracts, are actually contracts themselves. So you have to write a contract for each proposal that inherits from their system and then can be called and run things. Then the actual voting, it looks like, is actually done pretty much over making raw contract calls. There's a whole lot of complication or a whole lot of moving pieces to their voting system where they have a fast time lock and a slow time lock, which actually kind of seems like a good idea, that own different parts of the system. They also have a community multi-sig that can veto any proposal. And there's several other things about it, but basically it's a very labor-intensive process where you have to create EIPs in GitHub, you have to write a contract in GitHub to do anything, and then manual work to do stuff without a UI. So neither system, neither Aave nor Compounds looks really good, and I think we'd kind of said that Curve was even more complicated. So at this point, I don't see like any slam dunk, plug and play, drop it in system. Josh, do you have any thoughts there? Or is there, after that, does anybody know of any other good community governance systems out there?
Neil, did you look at the Uniswap? I mean, I took a quick look. It doesn't look good neither, but just want to cross our, make sure we.
Yeah, I'm wanting more places to look.
Yeah, it doesn't seem great, but it's like snapshot based and seems very manual too. But maybe we should still take a quick look at it.
Yeah, I think there's probably quite a few that are worth investigating. Curves is at least they have UI and different tools. Of course, all of our contracts are in Viper, which makes it harder for us. There's others that we should probably look at as well. Some of the yield aggregators, Yearn ecosystem, things like Pickle Finance or Harvest Finance, what they're doing. We should just take a little bit of a more thorough inventory of what other people are doing. And I think it's quite reasonable for us to rewrite the UI. I think really what we're looking for are good contracts that are battle tested and audited. That's really the scary part. We're going to want to customize the UI anyway to make it look like Origin. And really where we're going with this is actually opening up a strategist role to the community, where the community can start saying, hey, we want 40% of the funds going into Aave and 30% going into Compound and the rest going into Convex or whatever, right? Or saying, hey, we want to move funds from here to there. And so that's going to be all custom work, and there's nothing like that we can steal. The main thing we really care about is just having really, really solid and battle-tested contracts. I do know for Compound, pretty much every line of code has been audited by Trail of Bits and Open Zeppelin from them. So I know they work with good auditors, and they have at least before they hand it all off to the community, they were very diligent about auditing every single thing.
Any other questions or comments about governance contracts or governance process on chain? If you have any insights there and are watching the recording later, we'd love to hear from you in Discord. Love for you to get involved in the process. Tom, are you ready to give it another stab?
I am.
Cool. And everyone will need to click watch stream to be able to see Tom's screen.
Can you see it? Is it working?
Yes, it is.
working.
Cool. This isn't very exciting, but so
It is for me. It is for me.
I've reworked the Ledger integration. So when you go to select a wallet and you select Ledger, you'll get a list of derivation paths. I never could figure out sort of which ones. I think these are the three most common ones. They're used for different apps, like Ledger Live uses one of these, and one's called Ethereum Legacy, although I don't quite know where that came from. So you pick your derivation path, then you get a list of the addresses at that derivation path. This is just the first 5. I could paginate this if we want to go further than 5, so you can scroll through them to get more and more. And when you select one of these, it'll connect to that, and you'll have that account ready to go. And any sort of signing action or whatever will just come through on the ledger like you'd expect it to. Yeah, that's it.
And if we want to disconnect from this, is that supported as well?
Yeah, you just
hit
disconnect here.
Oh, brilliant.
It's if you're connected to it and you refresh the page, it should eagerly reconnect to that address, provided your ledger's still unlocked, because it requires the ledger to be unlocked to do a reconnect thing. So if you're not, if your ledger sort of locks itself, it won't reconnect to that same address. You'll have to go through those steps again.
Yeah. I saw Gnosis Safe isn't on the list anymore. Is that just because you're being smart about when you show it, or is it missing?
Yeah, so it never should have been on this list. That is handled sort of transparently when you open it in Gnosis Safe. Like the option in this list wouldn't actually do anything. It should handle it by itself.
Got it. Yeah, I think let's use those commonly used terms like Ledger Live or Legacy. I don't think anyone really knows those derivation paths. I think we should use the more friendly ones. And maybe we want to add like a balance or something next to it as well, just to give people a little bit of a hint of which one it is, because they may not recognize the address.
Yeah, I thought about that. I did that initially, but it just loads faster without it. So I think if we want to paginate them, like have more addresses, it's sort of better without the balance because it takes too long to load. But if we're just going to do the first 5, I think the balance is a good idea, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. The other thing that would be nice is if we could guess which derivation path it is based on which ones have balances. So if we can check all 3 of them and then default to, if there's only one that has balances, then just pick that one. Now, if they have both, then you show them the normal picker. But ideally, you just skip straight to the wallet addresses and you just pick one, and then you don't have to choose that because it's sort of a silly thing.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my concern is that, we have to do that. We have to sort of get those 3 derivation paths, maybe 5 addresses for each, and query all the balances for all of those before we can display anything. If you see what I mean. So we need to query 15 address balances to see if we can select one before we display an option for them to pick a derivation path.
Just query the first 2 on each.
Yeah,
maybe like
Maybe the first one on each.
I think like fetching 15 or like 5, should be pretty much the same, because you just query all at once in like promise all. But maybe like a UX that I'd be like pretty happy with is like having all three derivation paths, and then like sort of like a loading indicator next to it, and then it would try to fetch the balances of first 5 accounts and aggregate them in one number. So, because you're probably just going to have one of the derivation paths active, and the one that's going to have, aggregated balance of the 5 accounts is going to be non-zero. It's probably the one you will want to pick. If I'm clear enough trying to explain it.
That's how Ledger Live does it. it'll actually cycle through your accounts and show you the ones with an active balance. And it won't show you the next ones, but it'll prompt you to create another account if it's empty.
Which balance are you guys talking about? The ETH balance or token balance? Just FYI, Alchemy has an API to batch fetch a bunch of balances in one single API call. But I don't think it returns ETH, it just ERC20 tokens.
I think we would want stablecoin balances. So USDT, USDC, and DAI are the ones that we care about. Or USD for that matter. So I would probably want the dollar value to show the stable coins if we do it. I care less about showing the balance and more just like getting them to the right place, because it's extra clicks and people might not know which one it is, or it might just it's sort of a annoying UX to have to go through that every time.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's maybe an idea around sort of like an auto select option that you could choose versus manually selecting the derivation path in the account. I don't want to sort of get into a position where we auto select something and someone who has an unusual setup where they might use the 15th address on a certain derivation path. I don't want to get to a place where they can never select their account because we've chosen that we're checking the first 5 of each derivation path.
Yeah.
So maybe there's 2 paths in the UI. One's a magic select and one's a do it yourself.
You could just show the same screen you're showing right now, but if we see there's a balance, we let green highlight the one that has a balance, so somebody can just jump right in and pick the one that has a thing, because that's usually you kind of tend to know your account name, your actual wallet addresses, but often that derivation path is something you stare at and think for a second. But while you're staring at it, it could then highlight the one that's correct, and you just click on it and go on.
I think this is definitely a step in the right direction. Not sure how many of these users are interacting with our DApp anyway. I mean, ledger support is certainly important, but ones who have obscure setups with a bunch of different addresses on an odd derivation path might not be the users to optimize for. As long as, like you're saying, Tom, as long as they have a way to get there, then we probably don't need to optimize the experience for them.
Yeah, just keep in mind that the majority of our users now are coming in with $5 million is sort of the average buy on the minting side, and so you have to imagine those people are using hardware wallets, probably ledgers or multi-sigs. So optimizing the experience for these users is definitely worth the effort.
For sure. Any other comments or questions for Tom?
Just a huge thank you. This has been on my list for a long time, so thanks for knocking it out.
Thank you for making it easier to use product, Tom. Really appreciate it. Merci.
All right. There are several sprint priorities that have popped up since we defined what our priorities would be for these 2 weeks. Before we jump into what those are, I just wanted to mention, if anyone is here for the first time and you wanted to introduce yourself, maybe in the next 20 minutes or so, we'd love to hear more about how you ended up here, what you're working on, what you're excited about, that sort of thing. But we'll come back to that a little bit later. So I just wanted to highlight these things that have popped up. One is that I think we talked about this last week, removing the buffer from OUSD so that 100% of the funds in the vault are being used to generate yield, as opposed to providing a buffer to make it cheaper to redeem OUSD for underlying stablecoins. So Daniel, I think you signed up for removing this and may have already started on it, expecting that governance proposal to pass. Is that the case?
Yes, so we've got a PR written that actually removes all the code related to the buffer. as well. And we can also just send a strategist action to set the buffer to 0 as a temporary thing. Now that the community vote has passed, we'll be doing one or both of those this week.
Great. Then it looked like you were also removing the mint multiple code from the contract because we're no longer supporting that on the front end, and it adds a lot of complexity at the contract layer.
Yeah, it adds some complexity, but any complexity that we're not using, we just want to get rid of. So, yeah, and that PR is written, and we'll also need, and it has been reviewed, but we'll make sure that it's good, and then we can send that live as well.
And
is there any chance that there's, as we think about other protocols wanting to integrate with OUSD, is there any chance that they would want to use the mint multiple before we exit? I know certainly our UI doesn't support it anymore, but perhaps a protocol-to-protocol integration, they may find that useful.
You'll have to take a look or we'll have to figure out if other protocols are doing that. A lot of protocols seem to have, for a period, gone to just working off of a single stablecoin, like YDAI, or if they're using multiple stablecoins, they use 3Pool or something to hold a basket of stablecoins in a single token. So there could be room, I think, to have some kind of deposit a 3Pool token kind of thing. But off the top of my head, I don't know another protocol that lets you deposit multiple currencies at the same time. You know, it could be, certainly given our high mint costs, it could be efficient to deposit multiple coins at the same time if they have a need for it. Just, I guess, if we don't know of somebody who needs it, then it's nicer not to have the code there.
all right, and then Daniel, you're also going to make an improvement to the convex strategy that we just deployed?
Yes, so I already have a PR out with the bug fix in it, although we'll still do testing and fork testing on it and reviewing the whole process before deploying it. But the fix is very easy.
All right, and I think you mentioned that earlier, actually, in the surprises, that we weren't harvesting the rewards from the convex strategy,
yes,
but they are being collected. Just need
they're being earned, and they're all
yeah,
stacked up against our account. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for catching that. And then what about duplicate event on a compound strategy? What was that? What was that one?
We just are emitting 2 blockchain events on one action, and so that'll be a 1-line change to remove the second one.
All right, and you were going to take care of that one too?
Yep.
Cool. The last 2 projects that we had talked about before being priorities for the sprint were updating our analytics dashboard to be more visual, hopefully have some graphs or charts on there so that we can, at a glance, see what those numbers look like over time. I think, Josh, you mentioned last week that Dune Analytics is indexing all of the data now that we would need to build one of their dashboards. What are your latest thoughts on exploring that versus adding visuals to our analytics page?
I don't have a strong opinion. I think other people should play with Dune Analytics and see whether we think it's worth doing it there. There's a bit of a steep learning curve to just understand how Dune Analytics works. I mean, it's sort of SQL based, but there's a lot of things that we'd have to get familiar with. It could be that once we get up to speed with it, and certainly there's a lot of other examples out there of other dashboards that we can fork. And maybe it's better for us to start with Dune, see how far we can get, and then if it doesn't work, go back to doing it ourselves. But yeah, it at least seems like a reasonable place for us to start, and we'll get a little bit more discovery if we do it on Dune, because people are going to be seeing it there And it's nice to be play in the ecosystem a little bit more.
For sure. All right. Well, I think Doman is going to own this project, and I owe him some suggestions about what I think we should communicate on the dashboard. So I'll sync up with him later today. Doman, do you have any comments or questions about that right now? I know you haven't really had a chance to dive into it yet since you're back.
No, not really, but I was also thinking that'd be cool that we at some point expand, the history tab we have on like per user account on OUSD.com. I was thinking like the things I'd really like to see there would be probably, boost as sort of a like visual gauge or speedometer, how you call it, and maybe stuff like 24-hour yield, 1 week yield, 1 month yield. Be pretty cool to see how because currently we have like the whole history type of big table view, which is a lot of people don't read tables very well, and a lot of people check the 24 and 7-day things on the coin market cap. So I think that'd be like a pretty natural way to kind of communicate that, and maybe we can then maybe slowly move that own history page to a more dashboardy type of thing. Those were just my thoughts about that.
Yep. Yeah, I agree on the APY, particularly now that our 30-day APY is so much lower than our 7-day or 24-hour APY. I'd love to have that be a little drop down where you can just choose with what time period you want to see that over. So you can just choose 30, 90, 24 hours, whatever, from that drop down. And I think that'd be super helpful, especially as people are seeing different numbers in different places, and people are asking, hey, I'm seeing 50% APY on KuCoin. Is that wrong? And it's like, well, they're probably showing like a daily APY instead of a 30-day trailing. So making it easy for people to find those different numbers is probably worth adding, and probably a pretty fast thing for us to throw in there.
Yeah. Beside the APY, I was also thinking yield. Like how much have I accrued value, like in a week, or so that would exclude all the transfer and mint and stuff like that. Just like a sum of weekly yields and a sum of monthly yields. So you can say, well, I'm holding OUSD, and in the last month I've earned, I don't know, $300. There's really no way to quickly get to that number right now. So I think that'd be those sort of things, and it'd be pretty cool to see.
We could also do grouping on the history view. So like group by day, group by week. Those could be some little toggles, and then you just hit yield, and then daily grouping, you see your yield per day or your yield by week. That would be pretty nice, I think.
Yeah, agreed.
That all sounds great. Just to confirm, we're on the same page about priorities and scope for this sprint. I think that what we had talked about was like the global analytics dashboard as opposed to user-specific analytics for now. Does that sound good?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry for diverging the topic.
No. I'm glad you mentioned it, because back to the question of whether we borrow, the stack from Dune and build one of their dashboards versus rolling our own, graphs and charts and visuals on our dashboard. It's a good reminder that whatever we do on ours, we're probably going to want to do the same at the user level. So
good point.
So I think it's worth considering when we look at the two options. Okay, we are running a little bit short on time. The last sprint priority that we had on the calendar was a potential change to the way staking works for OGN. So Josh, if I can turn it over to you to dive into this, I think it would be a good thing.
Yeah, so we've been talking about changing the way staking works to make it more sustainable. The idea is you lock up OGN in order to get direct fees that are generated by OUSD and potentially other revenue that's generated from our NFT platform or any future revenues that we have. But at a minimum, looking at earning yield from USD. Currently, USD is taking 10% of the yield that's generated as a performance fee. And right now, that's just sitting there in an account, but we want to change to a model where that is either distributed directly or is used to buy back OGN, and then that OGN would be distributed to users. The model we've been looking at most closely is Curve's VE CRV type model, where the longer you lock up your CRV for, the more voting power you earn, and also the more economic power you have. And so as we've been looking at this model, one of the concerns that's come up is around basically what Convex did, where any locked token is ripe to be wrapped in another ERC20 that is not restricted, and it can be freely traded. And so we saw Convex did this to Curve, and now they've taken off of the power there. So what I did is took a little bit of an inventory of what other projects have done with the VECRV type model, and then taking inventory of what types of changes they've made, and then wanted to open it up for a bit of discussion as far as how we deal with the challenge of people potentially wrapping our vote locked token or not. So Cream, they didn't change anything other than putting in some emergency powers in their code. Same for Pickle Finance. They did exactly the same as Curves, where you lock up between 1 week and 4 years. And then you can earn up to 2.5x boost on rewards. And one thing they added on Curve, you start earning right away as soon as you lock up. On Pickle Finance, they make you wait until the next earning period, so you've got to be, blocked up for a week before you can start earning anything. I think that's to prevent timing attacks, but at least that seems to make sense. For Sushi, they've discussed copying this model. Andre posted on the Sushi forum saying they were going to do this. This proposal was passed, but it hasn't been approved yet. The changes they made, they changed it from 1 week to 1 month instead of 7 days. And then they added the ability to exit early for a 50% fee. And then the community has been actively discussing what they want to do with this, and they've been considering making some tweaks. Frax, they also copied the ECRV, but they've limited vote locking to EOAs. And then there's any smart contract that wants to be able to participate in governance has to get whitelisted. And so this, of course, prevents the convex scenario where you can lock that. And then, of course, there's convex themselves. They've copied this model where you can lock CVX for 16 weeks and 3 days. Rewards increase immediately, and then your voting power increases the following Thursday. So this is a very popular model. A lot of other projects have been doing the same thing, but wanted to get the community's take and what you guys think about this issue of being wrapped. Is this something that we're concerned about, and what are the possible mitigations for dealing with that?
Do you want to give a real fast summary of what the issue is with being wrapped?
Yeah, it's just that it's when it gets what we saw with Curve is that Convex came along and said, hey, we can aggregate the power, and so all of the votes end up going to Convex instead of to Curve. And so if we were to copy this token model with our staking, then potentially with any success, someone else would come along and create a liquid version of our locked tokens that would then try and aggregate the power, both economic and voting power. And so that's one of the things we have to think about as we think about whether we require people to lock up or if we allow it to be people to come and go as they choose.
Praxis model would prevent that, right? That only EOAs would be possible to lock up governance token and have voting power. I mean, that sounds like a pretty safe approach to me, because if you get to whitelist the contracts, you get to choose if you approve of whoever's gonna potentially wrap. If you're concerned with like shady strategies, you can still select the contract that you like. So that looks pretty safe to me, Praxis approach.
I know that some people will wrap these like curve tokens and will in a contract and automatically restake them, for 4 years to get the maximum benefit. And that's like a way of having, the maximum yield on it. So I don't know if we would want to not allow them to do something like that.
Well, I'm not exactly sure on the problem with other people getting it, but it does seem like handing out the OGN to people who have staked creates a pretty, a force multiplier on how valuable OGN is, because since it's going to a smaller pool of people, the effective return on your capital is higher, which affects the price of the OGN as a whole. Just because if you can get 25% return or some kind of bigger return on your capital by using it in a specific way, that seems like a pretty good win.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that some of these guys have done where like they automatically relock it for the 4-year period with a wrapper, and then and then that makes a liquid version of that, and it effectively burns the token, so it reduces the supply, so it does kind of help the price.
Yeah, it does. It just if whoever's doing the wrapping ends up aggregating the lion's share of the voting power, then they can start to control the protocol and how funds are routed, and so that could, depending on who that organization is, it could be a potentially dangerous thing. Anyway, this is one of those topics that we can take offline. People can continue to think about it, continue to discuss as we are starting to think more about making these changes. This is a work in progress. There's no, this is something we're starting to explore, but we haven't made any final decisions or don't have anything to announce around this. But this is certainly the direction that we are heading, and are trying to educate ourselves on best practices and what's worked for other projects and what sorts of things we can do at Origin to have better token economics for OGN, as that's something that we all care about deeply here.
Thanks, Josh. Max, do you want to give a quick update on social marketing, advertising?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we've been running ads now for the past couple of weeks, and specifically on Facebook and Twitter. On Facebook, it's not going so great just because it's hard for us to create like a good profile and target people. On Twitter, it's going a lot better, and I think our CPM is down to a pretty competitive rate. And I think it's proving pretty good for raising awareness, but I'm not so sure about how that's translating into new OUSD holders. But for some of this, we're waiting as well on data from Doman later this week. And then we're still continuing to explore some of the direct ad placements because we think that it's probably better value as well. If we can get OUSD up on some DeFi websites where we know the people there are like actively looking for yield farms or stable coins to hold. So that's kind of the high level update on what we've been doing.
Thanks for that. If anybody has any experience or thoughts on how to advertise more effectively on those social channels, please reach out to Max. But thanks for making the progress that you have. And Doman, I'll give you an action item to follow up on the conversion data. It sounds like you might be able to help out there. And Max, speaking of the potentially advertising on other dApps, I think that Coleman was trying to reach out to Zapper, Zerion, and DBank. Did you get anywhere with that, Coleman? I think I saw a couple of those conversations, but wasn't sure where it ended up.
None of them appear to have a ad sponsor program. So the conversations have been, I guess, kind of slow going because they don't currently do paid ads. We're trying to convince them to experiment and maybe we can be the first people to run paid ads on those platforms. But as of now, that's not something DBank, Zapper, or Zero.
All right. Well, thanks for continuing to explore it.
At a minimum, we should have our pool included. A lot of these have investment opportunities or stuff that's highlighted there. So at a minimum, we should make sure that OUSD is showing up, or if not OUSD, like the curve pool, because they have a lot of curve strategies there. We should just make sure that those integrations get pushed through. I know we've pinged them about it, but we should stay on them and make sure those actually get deployed.
I will continue working on that, and that's a good reminder that we still haven't gotten DeFi Pulse to merge and deploy the fix that I submitted for us to show back up on their leaderboard, because we should be somewhere well up into the top 50 now, but we're stuck at the bottom at 0. Thanks Coleman for helping facilitate that conversation in their Discord channel. I'm just going to keep pushing there, but if anybody has a more direct line to somebody with some authority at DeFi Pulse, that would be appreciated.
And I'm still checking in regularly, like about once a week with a lot of these other DeFi platforms. Jörn said that they pretty much approved us for either a strategy, but I've been checking back for an update and gotten an update. I mean, they publicly said that Alpha League, like they're going to be adding still talking to like StakeDAO, Alpha Homora, and some other platforms, but I think Jörn is probably the most important one to keep following up.
For sure. Well, thanks for pushing on that. Josh, did you add the last piece about other outbound outreach?
Yeah. So as we're thinking about what are some of the other places we can get users of OUSD, one of the obvious ones is people are holding USDT or other stable coins in their treasury. We know a lot of other crypto projects are doing that. And now an increasing number of DAOs are also holding large amounts of stablecoins in their wallets as well. Stablecoins that are not earning any yield for them. And while a lot of these organizations don't want to do any complex yield farming or take on too much complexity there, we do think it is quite compelling to for them to start using OUSD as a replacement for those other stablecoins that they're holding. Putting some numbers on this, is currently 1.9 billion USDC being held in Gnosis safes, 1.4 billion USDT being held. And so there's a lot of money sitting up there idle in these wallets. Doing analytics, we can use their dashboard to identify the top multi-sigs. And then what's nice is a lot of times corporate treasuries or DAO addresses are going to be on public web pages. So we can go through that list, Google the wallet addresses, find out who those are, and then we can actually do some outbound sales to them, reach out to their teams, either with warm intros or just jump in their Discord or whatever, and make that pitch to convert their stable coins over to OUSD. So it's something we'll probably start working on next week and try and get some more capital locked up in OUSD.
Sounds great. Any other questions or comments from anyone? There was one governance proposal that we talked about earlier, removing the USD buffer, that has since been approved, which I believe means that there are no currently open governance proposals, but if you would like to submit one, please do at vote.originprotocol.com. It is now time for a few quick introductions. If anyone wants to say hi and let us know what you're excited about, what you're working on, how you learned about Origin. And we can start with Calvin, if you're here. Calvin, go ahead.
Hey guys, can check in if you guys can hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Yep.
Sweet.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, just like Micah said, my name's Calvin. I'm a front-end developer, and I'm super excited about building Web3, especially joining a team full of wonderful developers and learning from you guys. I found out about Origin through applying through you guys' website for the front-end developer role. So right now I am going through the interview process of fixing or helping with some front-end issues, and I guess whatever else you guys will eventually need help on. But yeah, excited to be here and excited to work with everyone.
It's great
Thanks
to have
for
you.
being here.
And I think if you might have missed the early part of the meeting, we highlighted the two open contributions that you made. So thanks again for that. Those small pull requests and fixes don't go unappreciated, and that's how many of us ended up here on the team.
Yeah, no problem. Was there any conversation continuing with the Brave wallet integration, or was that settled?
No, thanks for the reply there, clarifying what you had tested. I think it'll let's see what you guys end up deciding on that other pull request, whether to introduce wallet link or not, and how that all fits in with the changes that Tom is making. Hopefully there aren't any conflicts there. But let's see where we're at after that, because like I said, the thing works in Brave, as you confirmed, and to my knowledge, we've never in the past year had a Brave user ask or complain about not being able to connect. I wonder how many Brave users are using the built-in wallet versus MetaMask. And if they click the MetaMask button, it works. So it would be great to add a Brave button there so that so we can advertise the fact that we do support Brave's wallet. But yeah, it's not I don't think it's a pressing concern, and we're on the right track supporting, like more explicitly supporting Coinbase Wallet's new browser extension and making the improvements that we're making to Ledger and others. So. Yeah, I think we're on the right track, and thanks for helping figure that out.
Gotcha. Okay.
Was there anyone else who wanted to say hi or introduce themselves? Any other questions? Any topics that we didn't cover? Feel free to unmute and say whatever you'd like.
Hi.
Hi there.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very well.
Thank you. I'm a Korean, so my English is not good, but I have a question. I see OGN stablecoin is getting growing very fast, and is the OUSD stablecoin getting developing very fast? Is benefit to OGN? Is
so
it right?
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, certainly. So currently 10% of all the yield that's generated by OUSD is used to buy back OGN on the open market. So it actually buys off a Uniswap on a regular basis. And you can see that happening in our Discord channel, and on chain you can see that buyback happening and the funds accruing to there. And so that is, as you can imagine, as OUSD continues to grow, the amount that is bought back and what that fee represents is only going to increase. And secondly, as the value in OUSD continues to grow, OGN as a governance token for that will also increase as well, as having control over a large pool of money certainly has some value as well. So we expect there to be positive impact for OGN as OUSD continues to get more adoption and more integrations.
Thank you for the reply. I really appreciate your transparency, your weekly Discord, and I will continually support the project. And thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for the question. How did you say your name?
My name is Sejun.
Sejun. Well,
Yes.
thanks again for being
I'm
here.
Korean.
Yeah, we're big fans of Korea.
Thank you. I love. I recently interested in NFT, and I really appreciate your Origin protocol is reading in NFT place. I really appreciate.
All right, wonderful. Well, we appreciate you. Thanks for being here. Was there anyone else who wanted to introduce themselves or say hi? Yep, thank you. If there wasn't anyone else who wanted to say hi, then I think we'll probably wrap it up there. Doman, I was going to add an action item for you to follow up on the conversion results for the ad campaigns. Daniel, I think that you've got a new list of other governance contracts to look through if that works for you. There are a couple of pull requests from Calvin that I think Doman and or Tom are going to be looking at. And then
I'll check those, yeah.
Yep, cool. Thanks for that. And I actually just remembered I had one that I forgot to write down from last week, which was I needed to clean up a little bit in the OUSD docs. I don't think anyone else had volunteered for that. So unless there are any other closing thoughts, sorry that this one ran a little long, but I think it was a really good one. And until next time.
Thanks, everyone.
You guys,
Yeah.
good meeting. Yeah,
Cool.
bye.